Think you've seen an amazing John Wall 360 layup? Think again. American Express is bringing basketball fans the epic journeys behind the All-Star moves. Go to youtube.com/American Express now and see the All-Star journeys behind the All-Star moves.
ESPN Radio. This is the Thundering Herd Podcast.
Oh, it's the Herd on ESPN Radio, wherever you may be, however you may be listening. Thanks for making us part of your day. Presented by Progressive Insurance. All of our guests via the Subway Fresh Steak Hotline. And today, because of Recruiting Day, I'm on ESPN News. And, sad news to report. I predicted a windfall for the NFL Network. So yesterday, I spent the better part of the second hour having a bet with Dan Stanzik over a Twix bar. It was heavy lifting here. And I said, okay, a Twix bar on the line. I think that the replay of the Super Bowl last night, 8 o'clock, NFL Network is going to get a 3. Stanzik mocked me and said it won't even get a 1. It won't even get half of a 1.
Where Colin was wrong.
Yeah, I got a .24. Nobody watched it. Nobody watched it.
I think you owe me a flat screen.
We didn't shake on it. It's incredibly discouraging.
That's fine. I'll just eat my Twix bar.
People chose to watch Georgia basketball over the greatest football game ever played. All right. You know what's funny about this? I wrote a list as I was watching the game. I opened a craft beer up, chips, and I had a list. I'm going to write 4 or 5 things that I noticed during the game that I didn't notice the first time, but nobody gives a rip. So what a waste of a night. It was amazing, though. What's that old saying? Good from far, but far from good. Let me tell you something. Tom Brady's the opposite. Dude, when you watch that game a second time, oh, my God. Forget 8 for 8. Dude, he was like, the ball was a laser perfectly placed into every receiver's hands. God, he was hot. It was unbelievable. We got a lot of moral questions today on today's show. I love today's show. And the next 2 days I'm gone, I've got to finish up a project I've worked on for 2 years. I'm finishing up tomorrow and Friday. Kind of a private thing. Totally jacked about it. So I'm giving you everything I have today. And I saw this story, and this is one of these things. The way it works now in the American media, like if I choose A over B, it means I love A and hate B. That's not true at all. That's not cauliflower, broccoli. I'll take broccoli. I don't love either. But the way the media works today, if you choose A over B, then you must love A, and then you hate B. Sometimes the Book of Zen has a quote. When choosing the lesser of two evils, they're both still evils. Like sometimes you're just the best option. And Adam Silver came out today and said, NBA commission, I'm not pro-sports gambling. I'm just a realist. Thank you. Listen, I'm not necessarily pro-guns, but people are going to get them anyway, and sinister people with bad intentions are absolutely going to get them, so I'd rather have decent Americans who are hunters and law enforcement have them, because bad guys are going to get them. I don't love guns, but I like it better than the alternative. I'm not pro-abortion, but young women are going to get them. Why not make them safer? Morality is personal. It's not my body. I don't think the government should control a young girl's body. They're getting them anyway. I'm a realist. It doesn't mean I love it. I'm not pro-teen sex, but it's happening. They're kicking it. Let's get them condoms. Abstinence is unrealistic. It was unrealistic for you at 17. You think now with all the images on TV and ads, there's not more sexuality? Grow up. I'm just a realist. I'm not overwhelmingly pro-gun, pro-abortion, pro-teen sex. I'm just a realist. It's better than the other options. All Adam Silver is saying is, you know what? I'm not pro-sports gambling, but he was quoted here today saying, I've talked to the other commissioners about it. It's a discussion. I'm going to let them go out and have opinions. It should be noted David Stern in 2009 started talking about this. It should be known that federal and state laws are not stopping anybody from betting, legally or illegally. People are betting. So just because you choose A over B doesn't mean you love A. You're all in on A. I mean, I've probably had in my adult life 4 TV shows that to me were flawless. Sopranos, Curb Your Enthusiasm, like Mary Tyler Moore, which is an oldie. 3 ever. I watch a bunch of them. Some get tired. I like House of Cards. I think House of Cards is unbelievable. That you can have your Breaking Bad. I think House of Cards is top 4 shows of my lifetime. But outside of those 4, I don't love universally, summarily every show. I just like it most of the time. Here's a moral question for you. I don't even know if I should put it this high in the show. But I thought about this morning. I don't know. It's not really worthy of this placement, but it intrigues me because of the guy, Lance Armstrong, who everybody hates now, right? So Lance Armstrong and his girlfriend, Lance was driving. They hit parked cars. He was driving, too much to drink, hit parked cars. They were parked in front of houses, right? So his girlfriend, Lance's girlfriend, gets out of the car, goes to the house, and is like, we'll pay. What do you want? What do you want? What do you want? We'll pay. And they're like, forget it. I'm calling the cops. They fleed. That part I don't like. You stay for the cops. You either pay the people whose car you hit, negotiate on the spot, or you stay for the cops. But let me defend Lance Armstrong, which Dan Le Batard did yesterday, and will probably get heat. Le Batard is 1,000% right.
It isn't an awful thing to do.
No,
it's a thing a lot of famous people would do. Because it wouldn't bring attention to the other person in the car.
Yeah.
If I got caught drunk driving right now, and I'm going to lose my job over drunk driving, you don't think that that's something that's going to run through my head? And the woman who loves me isn't going to be willing to take that up for me because it's going to be a problem for me that is going to cause us a bigger problem than if it were on her?
Dude, the celebrity life is the best life. The CEO isn't the best life. He's got CEO headaches. Travel, responsibility, employees, lawsuits. George Clooney, he just acts. Brad Pitt, Michael Jordan, worshipers everywhere they go. Supreme Court Justice, President of the United States. You really want to work 95 hours a week? If you don't think, let me ask you this. I live in the state, Connecticut. You're allowed to have an open cocktail in the car, as long as it's not the driver. You don't think a high school principal, he and his wife have a 2-hour fall drive. Let's pour a roadie. It's a long drive. We're picking up our kid in college. You just had breakfast, lunch, whatever. You're not going to be gassed. You think a cop pulls over that principal? He doesn't look at his wife and say, you were drinking it. Hell yeah. I mean, let's quit the rigidity here. Come on. You can bang on Lance Armstrong and his girlfriend for fleeing the scene. But if I've seen these big, highfalutin celebrities, it's the best life in the world for these cats. Seinfeld, Chris Rock, they don't have to run massive companies. They travel private jet on their own terms. They don't have to answer to payroll and employees. They don't have to worry about insurance coverage like a surgeon at a hospital. Go, laugh, huge check, worship me. Lance Armstrong is going to get destroyed for that. Thank God Le Batard and I are not moralists. That discussion, that cocktail in that car, that I got in a wreck, you take the hit, that is absolutely part of the deal for celebrities and the other half. That is part of the deal. Opening rant brought to you by Regis. New way to work. Call 1-800-OFFICES, 1-800-OFFICES. I was going to break down the football game, but nobody in America cares. I'm so disappointed. I spent 3 hours last night watching the Super Bowl replay, and nobody cares. I'm the only person in America that watched that thing. The rest of America watched. I was going to live tweet it. And after 2 live tweets, I was like, I'm tired. Good God, nobody's responding. Nobody cares. Lost a lot of steam. Really disheartening. And I wanted a Twix bar. I was dying for a Twix bar this morning. I was absolutely dying for it. So, Stanzik, tip of the cap. Hats off to you. You're the man.
Right. Oh, yeah, thank you. But what am I getting here? Flat screen, bottle of wine?
Twix bar.
No, I got my own Twix bar.
Twix bar. No, I'll pay for it. I'll pay for the Twix bar. That was the...
That's a raw deal, man. I thought I was getting better odds. You said I need at least 10 Twix bars then.
2 Twix bars. I'll do 2 Twix bars.
Left Twix, right Twix.
I need a better negotiator.
You ever frozen a Twix bar? You ever take... Oh, my God, they're great. Like, takes it to a whole new level.
Colin Cowherd. Looking good. Well, looking okay.
The Thundering Herd Podcast.
So I was saying this. There's a really weird phenomenon that happens in my business, and I can't explain it. And I've never been able to explain it, and I don't know why it is. But I grew up on the West Coast, and now I live on the East Coast, and I can't explain this. And I should be able to, because most people haven't lived on the West Coast for 25, 30 years, and then moved to the East Coast for 10, 15 years. But I have, and I still can't explain it. I probably could give it a pretty good run, but I can't explain what I'm about to talk about. In sports radio, here's how it works. In Los Angeles, when the teams stink, sports radio ratings go into the tank. Nobody cares. They disengage. In New York, teams stink. Ratings go up. People are angry. They call. They complain. I don't know why. New York sports radio ratings, 2 stations, combine them. The teams are unwatchable. Ratings are good. A lot of people listening. Los Angeles, teams are okay. Some are disappointing. Pete Carroll is lucky he coaches in Seattle. So Brock Heward played in the NFL. Big broadcaster out there. He's a big broadcaster now, former NFL player. He's talking about Seahawk fans are really bummed out about the play call and Marshawn Lynch not getting it.
Not seeing 24 involved, the best closer in all of football, the guy that's built for those moments time and again, to not see him and have him get the opportunity to put his final imprints on it is a pain that nobody's going to ever forget here. I mean, that also is a reality. 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 50 years from now, people will be looking back at that one play, that one moment in time, and it will be burned in everybody's memory.
But he's not angry. He's not angry. 2 things. Seattle as a city's passive-aggressive. They're not angry. They're not confrontational. One of the things I love about New York, it's confrontational. People are authentic. They're not trying to hide anything. It can be uncomfortable. It can be confrontational, but I like it. I like the big city confrontation. Let's flush it out. Let's yell at each other. There's something about it I like. I'm attracted to. Pete Carroll got run out of New England, run out of New York. If he was coaching a New York team, a Philadelphia team, a Boston team with that play call, he would get destroyed for 6 months. Darrell Bevell, the offensive coordinator, would be fired. It would be outrageous. In Seattle, they're like, that hurt. 10 years from now, my tummy's still going to ache. They're like, that kind of burns in my soul. Nothing against Pete Carroll, but he has been on a luxury ride for a couple of years. He left USC, program was a mess. Went to Seattle, they had like 3-4 quarterbacks, wasn't working. He got Russell Wilson, now he doesn't lose much. When I watched that replay last night, that last minute and a half, Seattle looked disorganized. They were burning timeouts, didn't know what they were doing. They looked disorganized. And I don't know why it is. I don't have a clue. I don't have a clue. But, man, losing brings out the fans in the East. Losing turns off the fans in the West. And I got to tell you, Pete Carroll, he's lucky he lost, quote, out there, out in the mountains on the coast. Because you watched that game last night, wow. Wow, New England is spectacularly coached. Wow. Lance in Philly. All right, Lance, you're a recruiter. Well, tell me what. Okay, so explain what you do and your take on this story.
Okay, I'm an executive recruiter. I place people in the professional world, mainly high-level sales executives and information technology professionals. So obviously we do everything from behavioral testing to just flat-out interviewing people. And I do a ton of work on the East Coast and West Coast.
Oh, my wife used to do this. It's fascinating.
So the big difference is the West Coast is something you brought up in the past. The ocean, the weather, the trees, the landscape. Everyone's happy. L.A., la-la land. And then you get to the East Coast, and you got 40-story buildings, concrete everywhere, banging into each other, fighting for space. So the negativity comes out. The chance we can get to yell and holler at someone makes us feel good. On the West Coast, no big deal. We'll shoot down to Santa Monica Pier and call it a day.
So you've been doing this for how long?
Almost 20 years.
So 20 years, and people out east, There is more congestion, more noise, more fight, so they call sports radio and talk radio, and it makes them feel good if they can vent because they're more frustrated in life, is what you're saying.
That's exactly what it is. If I can pound on my chest in a negative way, not a positive way, I feel much better. I'm from Philadelphia, so you know what it's like here.
That's a great call. That's fascinating stuff, sociology on the air. Lance in Philly, a recruiter. My wife did a little bit of that. She always used to joke about Minneapolis. She said they're so earnest, they're irritating. Like the worst thing in the world can happen. They're like, hey, let's have a potluck dinner with Susan and Darlene. Bring Fred over. She's like, you want to club him with a spoon. Show some anger here. Get angry once in a while. She used to say, Minneapolis, beautiful city, but they're too earnest. They're too nice. She goes, I recruit on the East Coast, West Coast. People have an edge. Walleye fish dinner and a potluck stew. All right. So this ESPN Radio presented by Progressive Insurance. Caller, click today. So I got something else. This is, I told you, I interviewed Rex Ryan at the Super Bowl. And it's nothing against Rex Ryan, but I had taken shots at him because I don't think he's a great coach. I think he's a great defensive coach. And so I had the chance to interview him in Arizona. And I told my staff, I said, I'm going to ask him the questions I would ask him. I'm not going to give him a curveball off speed stuff. I'm going to say, your offenses stink. So I was going to ask him questions knowing that I didn't know if he listened. He doesn't listen to my show, but maybe he was aware of how critical I had been because I was very critical. So I interviewed him, and, he was selling pizza and crust and all that garbage. It was just, But it's funny because the thing that drove me nuts about Rex Ryan when he went to Buffalo, it was the same introductory press conference. Oh, it's all great. It's all wonderful. The team is great. Oh, give me a break. Stop selling soap. So yesterday, I'll play it next. Another coach did this. Can you just be honest with the fans? Just be honest with them.
Technology gone bad. Gone bad. This is the Thundering Herd Podcast.
So Damien Woody is not happy, former Super Bowl champ, two-time Patriot Jet. You're not happy with this high school football national letter of intent day.
Man, you're talking about stroking these kids' egos. I mean, what have these kids accomplished? I mean, I don't know, man. It's all this 5-star, 4-star. Man, I don't buy any of that crap. I really don't, because it's not about what you did in high school. It's about what you do when you step foot on campus, man. And you wonder why you see some of these athletes at the pro level. You wonder why some of these kids are so entitled. Well, it starts early. It starts in high school. It's literally blow my mind how crazy this is.
J.J. Watt was a walk-on. Aaron Rodgers was a JUCO transfer. 22 Super Bowl starters. None are 5-star recruits. Who gets to the Super Bowl? Guys that got crapped on, like Richard Sherman, who didn't think he'd make it in the league. And I'm not saying there's anything. I think all the stars matter for the colleges, but in the NFL, where, let's be honest, you don't have restrictions on how much you can practice much anymore, you better be able to grind. Like you were saying to me, Belichick, tell the story about what it's like to live in, because you played with the Lions, the Jets, and the Patriots. How much harder the Patriots work you?
Dude, listen. First of all, I think I've told this story before, but I'm going to tell it again. I remember Belichick's his first meeting, his first training camp. He comes in, he walks in, we're all sitting in the auditorium. He comes in and says, don't ask for a break because there's no break coming. There's no light at the end of the tunnel. Put your head down and work. And he walks out of the room, just walks out. And I'm like, bro, we're done. I don't know how I'm going to survive this. It was the hardest training camp I've ever been a part of. It was one of the hardest seasons I've ever experienced in my pro career. But that's just how Belichick is. He's a grinder. It's like you're in a room, in a completely dark room. There's no light in the room. Until you win the Super Bowl, you're like, man, we just won the Super Bowl.
Oh, I see the light now.
I see what he's talking about now.
Darrelle Revis said during camp, Darrelle Revis, the former Jet, turned to a teammate and said, brother, we better win the Super Bowl because I've never worked this hard in my life.
Yeah.
He grinds you. Now, I got to tell you, this is personal for you. You got to let your emotion out. You just went through this weight loss thing, and it changed your life. Right now, there's a lot of emotion with you. You are so tired of Spygate. You wanted New England to win. Be honest about it. This was cathartic for you.
Dude, I wanted to pass the win so bad because everywhere, like every time I would break out like my Super Bowl rings, there was always some hater out there saying, well, you guys cheated. There's Spygate. And it would take every bit of restraint to hold me back from like knocking somebody out, literally, because people don't know how hard the players worked. And when people bring up Spygate or, these cheating allegations, it's an insult to the players who went through the grind, like every day, who went through that meat grinder, under Coach Belichick. We put in a lot of hard work, and I'll be damned if somebody's going to tell me that
it was a camera.
It was a camera that was a reason that we had our dynasty back in the early 2000s.
I watched the second replay last night. Nobody in America did. I bet him that it was going to get a huge rating, and nobody watched the replay. But I'll say this. When I watched the replay, I'm not going to go into all the details. I watched more line play and substitutions. For the record, the Seahawks pass rush was gassed by the end of that game. If Brady would have gotten that ball back with a minute and a half.
How sharp did he look in the Super Bowl? Vintage.
You played with young Brady.
Yeah.
His last two drives, it's not that he went 13 to 15. Okay, every pass
was
to a running receiver was pinpoint. Dude, he looked like he was 24. Do you remember his first year?
Yes.
Okay, go back to when you watched the Super Bowl, did it remind you of that?
It reminded me of those early Super Bowls. I mean, he was pinpoint accurate. I mean, pinpoint. Look, the receivers didn't have to adjust at all. They were catching everything in stride, able to make their moves. I'm like, wow. Like, this is the Brady. This is the Brady that I played with when we were winning Super Bowls.
He destroyed Seattle secondary. It's not with Edelman, Vereen, Amendola, LaFell. It's not like he had Julio Jones. And, it's like in the end, I watched it last night and I was like, I've never seen him play like. You remember when Michael Jordan against Portland in the finals got into that zone with 3-pointers?
Yeah.
And it's like Zen-like. I don't know if O-linemen get into it, but it was weird to watch.
Oh, O-linemen get into it.
You get into a zone?
Yeah, it's called pancake blocks. When you're tossing people around and you're inviting dudes to IHOP, yeah, that's what.
So you've been mad, you get into a zone.
Oh, yeah, you get into a zone. By the way, do we still address Seattle's secondary as the LOB?
Legion of Boom?
Legion of Boom after the Super Bowl? It's kind of questionable in my mind now.
They got carved.
He got carved
up.
Yeah.
Okay, so Marshawn Lynch, do we have that Larry Foote, that guy, do we have that bite from, he's a former player, Arizona, does he play for Arizona still? He's a player for the Arizona Cardinals, and he goes on a Pittsburgh radio station. He's mad at Marshawn Lynch for all the crotch grabbing and not talking. Play the tape right here if you could.
He needs to really check himself and understand that you're hurting these kids. You're not helping them. Yeah, you can give them PlayStations and free camps and T-shirts and cleats, but the biggest message that you're giving these guys is the hell with authority, do it your way. In the real world, you're hurting these kids because it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, but is it Marshawn Lynch's job to be a parent? So I hear Larry Foote saying all that stuff. It looks terrible. It's awful for the kids. Like Charles Barkley said. It's not Marshawn Lynch's job to raise your kids, is it? What do you make of the crotch grab?
No, it's not Marshawn's job to raise the kids, but listen, as we know, Colin, we know that kids idolize athletes. Everything that we do as athletes, kids are watching. They're absorbing it like a sponge. So, yes, I agree with you to a certain point that ultimately it is a parent's job to instill those values, but when you have these athletes who are big influences on some of these kids who grew up in tough environments, single parent homes, they tend to gravitate towards
the
guys television to people that looks like them, that they can relate to. So when they see Marshawn Lynch, doing it his way, doing things that I don't know, to me it just seems rebellious. Is that the message that you want to send to the kids?
You're kind of on Larry Foote's side.
I am on Larry Foote's side. It to me is just, I don't think that's necessarily the message that you want to send to the young kids out there.
You need to go pancake somebody right now.
Don't worry, I might pancake you, Pimp Juice.
Great seeing you, buddy.
Same here.
Geico presents Strange Savings Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
Putting style in black T-shirts. It's Colin Cowherd, the Thundering Herd podcast.
All right, so the caddies are suing the PGA Tour. The caddies don't have a lot of power. The caddies, I don't know if they're unionized, but the caddies on the PGA Tour, a group of pro tour caddies, has filed a class action lawsuit against the PGA Tour. And here's the reason. 82 caddies, that's a lot, claim they're... This is not funny, but it is to read it. Hold on, I got to be serious and professional here. Hold on. The 82 okay, hold on one second. The 82 caddies named as plaintiffs claim they are made to serve as human billboards to advertise. The caddies are saying we're tired of wearing bibs with advertisements on the bibs for sandwich shops and drivers. And you know how when you drive past a mattress store on like a Saturday, you drive past a mattress store, you know, you buy a mattress, and it's called like a Liberty mattress. And you see a kid out there, and he's just out there, and he's making like $4 an hour, and he's dressed as a Statue of Liberty that's a mattress. And you're like, oh, God, that's humiliating. Even that kid's getting paid. And what they're saying on the tour is, we're wearing these bibs with all these big corporations, and we don't get squat. And let me defend the caddies on this one. I don't get paid for every advertiser on this station or this network. I don't. I wish I did. I don't. But I get paid for a lot of them because you negotiate that with your lawyer, your agent, or whatever. But if I'm wearing a Subway shirt, show me the money! Somebody paying Uncle Ronaldo. Okay, if I'm wearing a Progressive hat, show me the money! Yeah. I'll read your copy once in a while, but you make me wear that stuff, show me the money! There you go. By the way, Darren Ravel told us NBA players would receive additional income if ads were placed on their jerseys. So I know all you big corporate litigators for like corporations don't want to empower the employee. You can't put ads on human beings, bibs. You're making those guys look like the kid outside the mattress store dressed as the Statue of Liberty on a Saturday morning making $4 an hour. It's embarrassing. Marshawn Lynch won't talk to the media, grabbed his crotch during the playoffs, and Larry Foote, who's a linebacker for the Arizona Cardinals, doesn't like the message.
He needs to really check himself and understand that you're hurting these kids. You're not helping them. Yeah, you can give them PlayStations and free camps and T-shirts and cleats, but the biggest message that you're giving these guys is, the hell with authority, do it your way. In the real world, you're hurting these kids because it doesn't work that way.
Damien Woody came on my show an hour and a half ago and agreed.
We know that kids idolize athletes. Kids are watching. They're absorbing it like a sponge. So when you have these athletes who are big influences on some of these kids who grew up in tough environments, single-parent homes, they tend to gravitate towards people that looks like them, that they can relate to. So when they see Marshawn Lynch, is that the message that you want to send?
Interesting. Now, years ago, it must have been 20 years ago, I don't remember what it was. It was like in the 90s, early 90s, 93. Charles Barkley came out, at the time it was unbelievably controversial.
I am not a role model. I'm not paid to be a role model. Parents should be role models. Just because I dunk a basketball doesn't mean I should raise your kids.
I got to tell you, I could make strong arguments both ways on this. I defended Barkley. He's right. I get calls all the time from people on this show. What am I supposed to tell my kids? They're your brats, not mine. It's a teaching moment. Figure it out. Why do you got to call me as a radio host and make me parent your kids? What am I supposed to tell my kids with that crotch grabbing? Turn to your son and say, That's vulgar. You should never do that. Oh, my God, you had to be a parent for 5 minutes. I'm not going to go into detail. I had one of the most remarkable parenting opportunities this weekend, Saturday morning. It was an amazing moment where one of my kids was out really upset with me and not using the greatest language. I'm not going to go into great detail, but I woke up Saturday morning and I said, you know what? You have a right to your emotions, and I have no problem with what you said, even the language. Because the word you used is just a word we in society have decided it's a bad word. You could have yelled spaghetti. You know, if we decided as a society spaghetti's vulgar, then you couldn't use the word spaghetti. But in the end, I was like, it was a teaching moment. And I wouldn't have acted that way 2 years earlier. I wasn't ready for it. And so I kind of tend to lean on the Charles Barkley is don't have 7 kids and then turn to an NBA player and ask, I'm struggling with my kids. You're sending out, well, then get your kids off television. Get them off video games. Talk to your kids. I don't really think it's Now, I don't like what Marshawn Lynch did, but that's not. Athletes are athletes. In fact, I'd argue they're awful role models. Go get a teacher. Go get somebody that, go get an educator. Athletes are, by definition, selfish, very centric into their world. They've given up large chunks to be good in sports. They're not balanced. They're, uniquely unbalanced. You should never look at athletes. I mean, it's great if they are nice. Peyton Manning's a nice role model, but don't look at athletes. They're pampered, spoiled. That's not a real life. Your kid's not going to be Peyton Manning. Josh, you're in the Herd on ESPN Radio. Go ahead.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. I'm a father of 6, and I could not agree more with Larry Foote. I just so appreciate somebody finally standing up and saying, hey, listen, you need to represent your employer and you need to be a man and play the football game like it's supposed to be played. You're sending a wrong message. And I totally agree. I think that he is sending a wrong message about authority.
Well, but what you're saying basically is always listen to authority. Is that authority, are there ever times as a father of 6, you're just wrong? I mean, you see in households from the parents bigotry, rigidity, unwillingness to evolve, trying to make your kids live a life they don't want to live. I mean, what kid really wants to go to youth baseball for 24 hours a weekend? Parents make mistakes all the time. When does the kid get an opinion? He's a human being, not a human doing. Should we always look at authority? And authority is always... I'm asking the question. I don't have the answers. Is a dad always right? Is there an absolute way to act on a football field? By the way...
I have apologized to my kids before, but we're not talking about major aggressions that this guy has to abide by. We're talking about some simple talk to the media. Don't do this, don't do that. We're not asking him to shave his head. We're not asking him to wear a suit and tie everywhere you go. We're not asking for, major obligations. We're asking for some simple guidelines to be followed. And I think that should be represented throughout the NFL that, hey, there are some simple rules that you should follow, and it's not okay to snub your nose at them.
Good stuff. 1-888-SAY-ESPN. We can differ in opinions.
Want more of the Herd? The Thundering Herd Podcast.
All right, Ian Rapoport is a reporter for NFL.com and NFL Network. So, Ian, you're a reporter, and clarify this for my audience, because these days with all these companies and ownership and NFL, because I like to clarify the air because I don't even know exactly how it works. You work for the NFL Network, NFL.com. Are you an NFL employee? Because when the story comes out, people, everybody wants to know where everybody is aligned. So can you explain exactly who you work for?
I work for NFL Network. I am a contract employee like most of our talent is. And obviously I'm, affiliated with the NFL, and I think everyone knows that, the NFL Network, how it was created and who created it, meaning, the NFL and the NFL owners. But my employer is NFL Network.
Do you have what you would say, and because of that proximity, do you have a unique understanding how Deflategate was viewed by, because anytime you work in a building with people, because I think it's very interesting when I follow you, it is a unique job. How did the NFL, do you have a unique understanding of, were they upset with Deflategate? Was there angst? Was there anxiety? How was it viewed within the league, within the buildings you work at?
Well, I actually live in Dallas, and I go out to LA every Sunday for game day morning. So I'm not sure from a being in the building standpoint in New York. Like I don't live in New York, so I'm not sure from that standpoint. But just like any reporter in my position, I've talked to a lot of people who work for the league, and I've talked to a lot of people with the Patriots, with the Colts, really just a lot of people about this deflated ball situation. I think from the league perspective, there is certainly a lot of frustration because of the integrity of the game issues it raises.
Yeah.
There was more frustration just about when it happened and that it happened, that it came to light the week before the Super Bowl, and that's what we were all focusing on. I think certainly whenever the integrity of the game and competitive balance comes into question, and it sort of mars the preparation for what the NFL sees as a big celebration, which is the Super Bowl, and I would agree. There was certainly some upset people about that.
Sure.
And I think from a Colts standpoint, it was also I don't think anyone thinks that the Patriots would have lost to the Colts if they hadn't used balls that were deflated. They won by 40, and they could have run beach balls into the end zone. It was just that if there were there are rules, and if the Patriots deliberately skirted them, that's wrong, and that's what this investigation is trying to find out.
Ian Rapoport. Now, there was an initial Bob Kravitz, Indianapolis columnist, came out and said 11 of 12 balls were deflated. Now, give us an update. Your story said that's not true. Give us your story.
Well, my understanding is that 11 of 12 balls were deflated, but what I heard and what I reported on game day morning, the morning of the Super Bowl, was that there was a ball that is in the league's possession now that was about 2 pounds under. Now we all know what PSIs are or is. So it was about 2 pounds under, and then the other balls were ranged from being a pound under, and then some were right at or below the line. So it wasn't like they were uniformly 2 pounds under. That's my understanding from talking to several people who are directly involved in this, and that makes sense because balls are different and they're handled different ways and they're rubbed up different ways and they're used on the field not the same amount of snaps. So it actually makes sense that they wouldn't all be uniform.
Now, in your Deflategate story, there is a term used that I was kind of fascinated with called elderly man. That's the only detail we know. There's an elderly, because I initially thought it was some Boston kid, some Southie, hey, I'm going to take the balls into the bathroom. It feels less sinister, does it not, when you say elderly man?
To me, that's just sort of what he is. He's a game day worker who works only for the Patriots on game day. And it was the reason I put that detail in there was because he'd been described as a ball boy. Which I think, you're right. A lot of people think, and I actually have lived in Southie, and I'm actually terribly. But I think a lot of people think it's a kid. It's not. It's an older man who has worked for the Patriots on game days for years, and I think we will potentially never find out this man's identity. There are certainly steps being taken to make sure that is the case. But he is described to be someone who is older and has worked for them for a long time.
Is it your belief with this story that the NFL right now today, they don't have much?
Well, there are only a couple people who actually know what they have. And here's my understanding of what they have. They have the original football that DeQuell Jackson intercepted. A lot of those other footballs are back in circulation with the Patriots because that's what you would do. The Patriots didn't find out really until Monday morning, so a lot of the balls just kind of went back to where they came from, which is in a big bin of balls. So they have the original ball. They have the numbers from when the balls were tested at halftime, and then they have 40 interviews with employees, and then soon they're going to have, Tom Brady and Patriots players. All of that will come after the Super Bowl, presumably after they get off these duck boats, which they're on right now.
By your definition, would I be considered an elderly man? What is elderly man?
There's
yes.
so many ways I can go with this. I could go the funny route. I asked that question, and what I was told was it's just what you would think. So, I guess it's like the Supreme Court's definition of pornography. You sort of know it when you see it.
Sure. When does this come to fruition? Just gut feeling here, Ian. Ian Rapoport, NFL Network, NFL.com. You can follow him at Rapsheet on Twitter, which I do. Your gut feeling, 2 weeks, a week. When do you think this thing wraps up?
I was told a couple weeks, so my guess would be not this week, maybe end of next week, maybe the week after. The combine is starting on mid to late February, so my guess would be it'd either be right before that or sometime after that. You'd think right before because there's not that much more to. They've done a lot of work already, so there's not that much more to do, but we shall see.
All right, Ian, good stuff. I love the elderly man. You have no idea how fascinated I was with that term. As I get older, just the term itself fascinated me. So, Ian Rapoport.
What I'll do after this is I'll take a look at your picture and I'll decide whether or not you're elderly. I think that's fair.
Thanks. I appreciate it, bud.
All right, thank you.
All right, follow his stuff.
Colin Cowherd. Looking good. Well, looking okay.
Thank you. Hold on, let me blow my nose.
The Thundering Herd Podcast.
Is there too much flash, Steve? Is there too much idolization of the kids and look at them in press conference? Are you comfortable with it?
Well, I think there's a classy way to do it, Colin. I think it's great for our sport that we get some exposure this time of year when nobody's playing ball and we're not on the field. But I think there's a right way to do it. And so I watch a lot of these things. The majority of them are done really well and classy, and ESPN does a great job with the all-day coverage and everything that's going on. I think at times it can go a little too far, and it can be somewhat disrespectful to the other schools that maybe a kid doesn't choose. So with our guys, we just try to educate them on how to do it and do it the right way so that it's classy and it looks good for our sport, it looks good for our university.
Sark, when a kid goes out and he's got a USC hat and a Michigan and a Alabama, do you generally know if he's picking you or not?
It's always good to know. When you don't know, that's not a very good feeling, and generally doesn't go your way. I will say history has told me that when you didn't know, man, that you never got it right, and it was never good for you. But last year, I was proven wrong with a couple different guys. Adoree really never told us. Juju never really told us, and so we were watching it like everybody else, and I think that's why you saw such a great reaction out of our staff when those guys did choose USC.
Steve, there's so much attention to it now. So I would guess because of all these services and all this videotape, you would think that it would be easier. You'd have more videotape. Do you make more, fewer, less mistakes? Do you think today you hit it on kids more or less? What's the percentages?
Well, I would say this, Colin. The best way to evaluate any young man is with the naked eye, is when you're right there with them and you're right there on the field and you can watch them compete. You see them fight through maybe a little adversity, maybe an ankle sprain, maybe a drop ball. You can see the explosiveness out of cuts. And so the best indicator of evaluating a kid is the actual eye, the eye test. What has hurt that, in my opinion, some recently is the amount of camps that are going on around the country, whether it's the Nike opening, the Rivals Challenge, all these things that are going on. The kids are more apt to go to those things. They can get gear, they get all the paraphernalia, they get all the press from what's going on with them from the media side of it. That sometimes it's hurting our own camps and getting the kids on our own campus to evaluate them. So that's the challenge, is to get these kids on your campus so you can see them, up close in person, and really get a sense for what they're about, not only physically but their mental makeup as well.
4 of the best quarterbacks in the country, I could argue 4 of the best 5, are in your backyard. Why does Southern California historically produce not only a ton of NFL players, Tom Brady, I mean, you look around the league right now, Andrew Luck, well, I guess he's Houston. Why does SoCal this year, and I've seen it more and more in the last decade, why do they produce so many great quarterbacks?
Well, I think the quarterback position now has become a position when a kid is 8, 9, 10 years old, it's, okay, this is what I want to do. And the quarterback position has taken on somewhat of the Olympic sport model, and this is a year-round thing. I mean, these guys are going to the quarterback gurus year-round since they're 9, 10, 11, 12 years old. Then they work their way. The 7-on-7 thing is now what was just in high school is now in the middle school age, and so these guys are throwing year-round, and then they're mastering their craft. They're working at their craft. They're not out playing basketball, baseball, soccer, and football and doing it year-round a bunch of different sports. They're focusing on this thing. In the end, you're getting players that are really well prepared physically. They're well prepared mentally. It's allowing them to play earlier in their careers and play well in college. And I think the offenses have become a lot more conducive to the quarterback. You know, you even watched the Super Bowl with Tom Brady. I mean, there weren't a bunch of really tough throws that needed to be made. It's about quick release, making good decisions, being really accurate in the short game. And I think the guys are growing up in those systems, and so it's making them really effective in college when they're playing in those types of systems.
USC head coach Steve Sarkisian, 13 guys signed, another 10 or so will come in. Many speculate they could have the best or second-best class in the country. How would you describe your recruiting style?
Well, I think this, one, Colin, and you know this as well as anybody, we've got a great brand. I mean, USC is an unbelievable brand. It's an unbelievable product. And we really try to, one, not lose sight of the personal relationships with the players, with the prospective student athletes, because I think we're in the people business, and I think that goes a long way. But that being said is, how do we get those young men to understand the value of USC, not only on the football field and the history and tradition and all those things, not only our current roster and the current class coming in, but the education, the connections, the networking, the value of the degree, living in Southern California. All those things are so big. It's how do you find the right times to push the right button so that they value what you're giving them, to understand how much of a quality brand that we actually have.
You pretty much know your class. You got a couple of guys hanging out there. You can't name or talk about players until they're officially in, so there's a couple of super high-level guys. Like right now, are you nervous? Are you anxious? Are you just sitting there like, oh, get this thing over? What's your state of mind right now?
Well, I always am until it's done. I mean, geez, I've seen some crazy stuff go on in recruiting, so you always are. You take it stride for stride. You can't wear yourself out with it. But I love this class. I mean, we're so fortunate. I mean, our guys, our staff has done an amazing job of getting us a complete class. The 24, 5 guys we signed here, you look at across the board, 2 quarterbacks, 3 running backs, a tight end, 4 O-linemen, 5 defensive linemen, 4 linebackers, 4 DBs. I mean, you start looking at this thing, I don't know if we could have really scripted it better. And so, it's great to get the signing day splash where there's some excitement about your program, but I don't want to get hung up on that, because we've had a lot of great players commit to us already, have been committed to us, that are going to help us win a lot of football games.
All right, Sark, in a few hours you can tip one and enjoy it and hang out with your family, but white-knuckle time for you and the Trojan family. Congrats on already what's in and what's to come. Thanks, bud.
Thanks, Colin. You're the best, bud.
All right, man. Coming up Thursday in the Herd, Tom Brady's the greatest quarterback of all time. How many years does he have left? Teddy Bruschi stops by. Could he play to 50?
Get in the Herd. Thursday on ESPN Radio.